second grade. In today's video, we are going to be counting the attributes of 3D shapes. So this is going to be very similar to when we counted the sides and corners, or sides and angles in our 2D shapes. The only difference is with our 2D shapes, the angles and the sides were the same. For example, a triangle has 3 angles and it has 3 sides. That's not always the case with 3D shapes, but we'll go through a few examples together and figure out what they are. So before we do that, we need to talk about the 3 attributes of 3D shapes. So every 3D shape has a face, has an edge, and has a vertice. Most of them have more than just one. So let's talk about what they are. So a face is the flat part of a 3D shape. So right here, our face is this flat part of the cube, and you'll notice that it is a square. So if we have our cylinder right here, you'll notice that our face is that flat top right here, and you'll notice it's a circle. Now our edge is where our face ends. So you'll notice our face of our cube ends right at this red line. That is an edge. So if we look at our cylinder again, you'll notice that our edge is right here at the very end of our flat face, and there's another one down here. Now, the vertice is where our edges meet, so it'll come to a point. And I like to think of them kind of like corners. That's how I remember it in my brain. Now, you'll notice on our cylinder, there aren't any points where our 2 edges meet. And sometimes that happens. But on our cube, I'll show you an example of a real-life cube. You'll notice on our dice, the edge, there are points that come to a point together. The edges come to a point. That's a vertice, okay? Now you'll hear me sometimes say vertex and sometimes say vertice. A vertex is just one, and vertices are more than one. So that's why I keep interchanging them. If it's one, vertex. If it's more than one, vertice. Now let's practice a few together. We're going to use the cube and the cylinder and count our faces, edges, and vertices. Let's start with our cube. Now I am going to count the faces, but think about this for a second. We use dice all the time. How many numbers are on a dice? Yeah, there's 6. And those numbers are on what? Yeah, it's on each of their face. So if there's 6 on here, then there's probably 6 faces. Let's count and see. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 faces. Now let's try that one more time. You'll notice when I'm flipping it, the numbers don't go in order. That's fine. I'm just making sure to flip it and then not forget to count the faces on the sides, okay? So I have, let's do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 6 faces in a cube. Now let's count the edges. Now I am going to draw lines on my edges just so you can see what we did count and what we didn't count. Now, it is a good idea to go into your house somewhere and find these shapes so you can count them. However, if your parents don't want you to write on them, please do not write on objects in your house unless your parents tell you it is okay. So let's start right here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, which makes sense because this face is this shape of a square, and we know a square has 4 sides, so this face has 4 edges. Let's keep going. So we have 4, 5, 6, 7. You'll notice I'm not counting this edge again because we already counted that. So we have 7, 8, 9, 10, 10, then I'm going to flip it one more time, and you'll see that this edge we counted way at the beginning, so I'm not going to count that. I'm only counting the sides. So I have 10, 11, 12. Now that's a big number. I'm going to write it down before. Sorry, second grade, my video stopped on me. So let's get back to what we're doing. So I wrote down that we have 12 edges just because that's a big number and I want to remember it. But let's check just to make sure. So we're going to check to make sure all the sides have a red line on them. So far, so good. Let's check these sides. Good, 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 good. And good. So let's count one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, when we flip it, we're not going to count that bottom one because we already counted it. 5, 6, 7. Flip it one more time. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We're not going to count this one. We're not going to count that one because we already measured it. So we do have 12, or measured it. We already counted it. Stuck in our last unit. So we do indeed have 12 edges. Now, the edges are probably the toughest to count because it's hard to keep track sometimes. So you might have to count them more than once, but that's okay. Now let's lastly count our vertices. Remember, our vertices are these points where the edges come together. Let's count them. We'll start the same way we did before. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Flip it. We counted those bottom two already, so we have 5, 6, and 7, 8. And if we flip it again, we'll notice that we already counted all the edges on that side, or the vertices on that side. So we have 8 vertices. Now I know the cube can be pretty tricky. I'll give you that because there's a lot of faces and edges and vertices. Well, let me give you a little hint. If you know how many of all the attributes a cube has, so it has 6 faces, 12 edges, 8 vertices, think about a rectangular prism. That's just a cube stretched out. So it's going to be the same amount of faces, edges, and vertices. So that should help you out a little bit with the other shapes that you're going to be counting today. Now moving on. Hint, hint, hint. If you want to pause the video and write those down, that might be a good idea. But I didn't say it, okay? So if you want to do that, go ahead, but I didn't tell you to. Now let's count our cylinder. Now our cylinder is going to be a whole bunch easier because there's not as many faces. So let's get into it. How many faces do you see on our cylinder? What do you see? Well, I see a flat side here, and I see a flat side here. So there are 2. Now that other part of the cylinder, this curved part, it's not flat, so it's not a face. Now let's move on to the edges. Remember, the edges are where the face ends, okay? So I see one edge here, and I see one edge here, making it 2 edges. Ooh, our cylinders, so far, they are the same amount. Let's see if our vertices will be the same. Remember, vertices is where the edges meet. Do these edges ever touch? No, they don't. So how many vertices do we have? None. Meaning we have 0 vertices. And just like that, we found all the amounts of the attributes of a cylinder. And with that, I think you're ready to go on and do this on your own.